Hello, my name is Tara Karchowski, and I am doing my presentation on astrology and the constellations. And just words of warning, don't take everything so literally in astrology. I mean, there's connections between human character and events. None of it has been proven that the planets and signs directly cause anything to happen to us. And it may be no more than just a reference points for a third factor yet to be discovered or something like that. And then knowing this, you have to take everything and all the variables into account, and it honors free will. So don't allow the stars to dictate your life, basically. Just use them as maybe a reference here and there. Just take it with a grain of salt. So, my intro. We look to the sky for the answers every day. We use the stars to navigate and tell stories and teach morals while also using the placement of the moon, planets, and sun, and other celestial objects to gain a better understanding of this world. Astrology and constellations were created way back before Christ in the BC, and originally organized by the Babylonians and the Romans and the Greeks. Astrology is a study that idolizes the search for meaning in the sky. It seeks to predict future events and to understand general and specific human behavior using the influence of celestial objects. We use the alignment of the stars and the planets and the moon and sun to predict seasons and to navigate in location, weather events, and even signs and horoscopes. The constellations and astrology play an extremely important role in man's historical and cultural development. It actually led to the science of astronomy and its view in which the universe operates. So the study of the constellations in astrology was also known as cosmology, which allowed us to mentally place ourselves in the world into the bigger picture of everything. And ancient Greeks, Romans, and Babylonians started by giving the star patterns and planets names and began to attempt to study their origins. So they called the star patterns and constellations and asterisms. Each one has a title and a story behind it, and each star or star cluster, group, and other different celestial groups got their own titles. So here I have some pictures of constellations and asterisms. And these were used for purposes of tracking seasons, traveling, navigation, conveying history through stories, teaching morals and religion. And the difference between constellations and asterisms is constellations are more of a bigger star pattern, while asterisms are smaller star patterns and they are within the constellations. So constellations, there were originally 48, and there's now about 88 of them. And for an example, these were more also based on gods, heroes, and fable animals. But you have Ursa Major, the Big Bear. That's a constellation. Now the asterism would be the Big Dipper that is in there. That would be an asterism. So it's a smaller, it's like a mini constellation in a big constellation. And this is just a chart of some of the brightest stars. It's a star ranking chart. You have Sirius, which is the brightest star, and that's in Canis Major, which is the big hunting dog. And then you have the Orion stars, and you have Betelgeuse, and so on. These are some of the stars and stuff that you'll see in the northern hemisphere, northern constellations, and then the southern constellations. Now here, you have some more stars. You have the Canis Major, there's Sirius, there's Betelgeuse in Orion's shoulder. And then here you can find the North Star. When you look at the end of the Big Dipper, and follow it to the handle of the Little Dipper, and then straight on north. whichever direction that may be. And these are just some of the other ones. Betelgeuse is part of a triangle, and so is Sirius. The winter, and then there's also the summer triangle and stuff. Different origins of the world started using the stars, the moon, planets, and sun for anything they thought they could connect it to in our world to help make sense of things. People back then didn't have all the science facts that we have today and relied greatly on faith, beliefs, and intuition. They created symbols and signs and gave them metaphoric meaning. The most well-known and popular constellations that were and still to this day used in astrology are the zodiac. Each origin had their own version of astrology and used a different type of zodiac. So you have your Western and Eastern versus, well, Eastern would be more of like the Chinese and stuff, where they have the monkey and more animals and the dragon, and they go off years. However, ours goes off of months in the year. So they all came, most of them are animals, and they come into the night sky at certain times of the year. And really quick, I'm going to tell you about a couple of, I handpicked a couple of the constellations in the zodiac that I like. So here's one, the Cancer, the crab. And let's see if he's in here, the crab, if he's anywhere around. He may not be in any of these ones, but that's what it would look like in the sky right there. So the crab, it actually, according to the Romans, the crab has a small role in the story of one of the 12 labors of Hercules. And as the great hero fought the many-headed serpent Hydra, the enormous crab joined the battle. Hercules suddenly found himself fighting a tag team match against two monsters. The crab had been sent by the goddess Juno, who hated Hercules, and the crab managed to nip the hero on the heel, but this didn't bother Hercules, obviously. He's strong, and he killed both the Hydra and the crab. So Juno decided to reward the crab anyway by placing it in the sky. And the crab, actually, when astronomers point their large telescopes at Cancer, they see one of the most interesting objects in the sky, which is the Crab Nebula. And then, let's see, another one would be Capricorn. And Capricorn, it's a winter sign, in case you're wondering. Let's see if there's a Capricorn. I don't see Capricorn right now. Sure, Capricorn's out there though. But Capricorn is one of the smallest of the constellations of the zodiac, and it's sitting between Sagittarius and Aquarius in the late summer skies. It's the sea goat. Now, this is an interesting story. So, it's a Greek legend. Pan was the god of shepherds and flocks. So, according to one story, he once took the form of a goat, and while trying to escape a monster, he jumped in a river and began to transform into a fish. But the river wasn't quite as deep as he imagined. Only part of his body below the water turned into a fish, and the upper part of his body, still above water, stayed as a goat. And so that is the strange creature that we see on star maps today, which is the sea goat, Capricorn. Another one, this is my favorite, I'm a Gemini. So the Gemini twins, right there. And the Gemini twins you'll find in the winter sky, and they're Greek mythology. The twins were known as excellent sailors. And they have a whole background story, which I won't bore you all with right now because this is a long presentation. Another one is Leo, Leo the lion. And Leo you could see during spring, mostly. And he's seen as different things, actually. To Greeks, Leo was the lion, a monstrous creature that tormented people and ate their herds. And at first, Hercules tried killing Lion with his bow and arrow, but his weapons were useless, so the great warrior battled the lion with his bare hands. So, in the end, Hercules was victorious, the lion was killed, and placed in the sky so that everyone could remember Hercules' powers. Let's see. That's one of the main stories. To the Chinese, the Leo stars were actually a horse instead, believe it or not. So, another one is Libra, the scales. It's kind of the balance. You have your balancing good and bad, all that stuff. And then you have Pisces. I love Pisces now all of a sudden because my son's a Pisces. And the Pisces are fish. So they're sometimes called the waters, and you'll find a sea monster, sea goat, dolphin, water bear, and several fish in that part of the sky. So to the Greeks and Romans, the fish of Pisces were actually Aphrodite and her son Eros. So to escape the many-headed monster named Typhon, the two jumped into the river. Once in the water, they turned into fish and swam away to safety with their tails tied together. So, and that was so they couldn't be separated. And last but not least, Taurus, which is the bull. And I don't know, he's a pretty popular story. If you ever go to the planetarium, he's usually charging across the winter night sky, they'll probably tell you. And his face in the sky is a V-shaped cluster of stars, which you can also find the Seven Sisters too there. The bull's eye, let's see. I guess if you're looking to the sisters, they're called the Pleiades. I believe that's how you pronounce it. The Greeks, they were 7 stars who represented the beautiful daughters of Pleione and Atlas. And one day while traveling, their mother, the 7 sisters, met the hunter Orion. And they were so beautiful that he fell in love with all of them and immediately began to chase them. But Zeus didn't approve, typical father, and ended it by immediately, he basically had Taurus protecting them. So they flew into the sky where they still see him today. And Orion, he hasn't given up. Every winter you could see him chasing the sisters across the sky, they'll say. So that's a fun little story. Alright, enough about the constellations that I like in the zodiac. So the cool thing about astrology is that it is open for each individual's interpretation. Everything has something, or means everything means something, and everything happens for a reason. And everyone's affected by it differently. No one's the same usually when it comes to astrology. I mean, you might have a lot of things in common, but yeah. So some people may argue, however, even if you can't figure out why something had happened, you just have to dig deeper. When something bad happens to us and we can't understand it, we go, why me? It's usually there because, believe it or not, there's a lesson underneath all of that. Or maybe it was actually something helping us avoid something that could have happened that was going to be way worse. So just because everything isn't scientifically proven correctly does not mean it's not real. It's like love. You can't see it, but it's real. It's there. So in this presentation, I will answer some more questions, and I will talk briefly about the different studies in astrology and some of the stories of the constellations, which actually I already did that. So our ancestors used it, and even to this day, we still use astrology and the stories of the constellations to grow and develop our inner self. What and how? What is astrology and how does it work? So astrology is based on the belief that the movement of the stars and other celestial objects affect our lives here on Earth. Alright, so astrology deals with trends and patterns. It's not predicting day-to-day or minute-to-minute occurrences. We'll come back to that. So everyone acknowledges these effects, but those who do and study astrology believe that all things, both terrestrial and celestial, are strongly connected. For an example, scientists have determined that the moon has an influence over certain things on Earth. Just like we discussed in chapter 7, I think it was, at least in my book it is. I got an international copy. But chapter 7 talks about how the moon has a pull on things on Earth, like the tides and stuff. The most common misinterpretation of astrology is that it determines our fate. It actually doesn't determine our fate. It describes our potential. It is our choice to live up to that potential or choose not to and just blow it all off and be like, "Peh, that's not real." So, astrology is an effective way to interpret our own individual realities. Studying it helps us to increase our awareness and knowledge of ourselves and the people around us. So, it examines patterns that prevail in our lives, and then it also examines the opportunities and presents us our gateways and doorways that are made available to us. So astrology, it's supposed to be empowering. It's supposed to be a good thing and make you feel good and help you out. Kind of give you a little like one-up lifesaver in life. So astrology is organic. It's something that you have to like harness over time, and it grows a deeper meaning the more you learn its language and its symbols and begin to understand it. So in natal charts, birth charts, that's all that means. There are basically 3 elements to create them, and you need to do them with patterns, and you need to chart it by the date, time, and place of birth. Alright, now, once you have that, then that's all placed with planets in relation to Earth and particular signs, the 12 horoscopes, in addition to the sun and moon, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So without intuition, you're just basically reading a bunch of symbols that mean nothing to you. So you have to really be open-minded and really just dig deep. So the planets, they express the energies, and the planets align. You pick them out, inner, outer motion, strengths and weaknesses, and each of those means something different with each different zodiac sign. So in the language of astrology, you have to know the following. First, your 12 signs of the zodiac. So from left to right, you have Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, Taurus the bull, Virgo, Capricorn the sea goat, Aquarius, Gemini twins, Libra, Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio. And here's a little chart for you. If you don't know what your sign is, here you go. Find your birth date, and then read what your sign is across. And these little symbols are pronounced glyphs, I think, something like that, glyph. And once you know that, that already is your first step. Here's another little chart. So for me, I'm Gemini, I'm the twins. My birthday is June 7th. I'm an air sign. And Chinese sign would be a horse. However, Chinese usually go off years. So 1992 is actually the year of the monkey. And then each animal has different characteristics and traits. Down here it'll give you 2 main traits of the signs. So Gemini, versatility and curiosity. Yep, I'm a pretty curious person. And for Pisces, sensitive, faithful. All Pisces people I've met, they're pretty sensitive and faithful. Alright, so we are moving on to the 10 planets. So obviously the sun and moon we don't consider planets, but some people in astrology will say that. So we have the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So getting to know the planets, the sun and moon, they're both based off of ego and emotions. Mercury is your intellect, Venus, your love life, Mars is your energy, Jupiter is your luck and higher mind, Saturn, responsibilities and karma, Uranus is individuality, Neptune is visionary self and the illusions, your illusions, Pluto is how you transform and how you regenerate your life. And then you have your elements, so you have the fire, earth, air, water. The qualities, cardinal, fixed, and mutable, those all each have their own different traits and characteristics. So, for example, mutable signs, they are associated with adaptability, leadership, ambition, creativity, extroversy, analytical, but sympathetic mindset and versatility. And over here, it'll show your sign, and it'll give the English name, and the element, and your quality. I'll let you look at that for a second. Okay, so you also have the polarities, which is positive and negative, internal duality, which some might, that's kind of where the whole yin and yang sign come from, the negative and the positive that goes along. Then you have the triplicities, which is the signs of earth, air, fire, and water. That's another word for the elements. And then the quadruplicity, that's a hard word to say, quadruplicities, which is the signs of the cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So, moving on. So the sky is divided into 12 sectors known as houses. This is the second part of understanding the language of astrology. So the 12 houses are in order 1 through 12 house. So you have each house goes with a different sign too. So for example, like the first house, let's do Pisces, second house. This is a definition of what it would mean. It's different, but all these houses can be put with one sign. So the second house in Pisces, you can be in practical and money matters, but also inspired and intuitive. And tap into your common sense and consult someone trustworthy about major financial decisions. Also plan, develop, and implement realistic, practical money-making ideas and avoid those that promise quick returns. That makes sense too, because if you know a little bit about Pisces, they can be not very realistic. They're kind of in a dream world and they need to come back to reality every once in a while, almost like a Gemini, but not as much. Alright, so talking about the houses, the first house talks about birth, and then, let's see, sorry, one second. See if I can find a better explanation for you guys really quick in my book. Here we go, the houses. So, long story short, the houses, they're for different things. The first house is your birth, your personality, so it's the self, beginnings, physical health, early life, physical appearances, and here it's your personality. It's what we see. Second house is possessions, so your money and your values. Third, your logical mind, state of mind you're in. In one of my books, it actually had really good definitions and meanings behind them all. I know for this one, the possessions, it actually said the second house represents what you own, and it is bound up with the health, material possessions, and personal belongings, and also represents feeling. The third house, the mind, the third house has to do with how you think about the world, communicate ideas, and how you express yourself. Fourth, home. So the fourth is house is about where you live, your roots, your ancestry, your parents and family. It's where you come from. And the fifth is of creativity. It's pleasure, leisure, socializing. The sixth is work, so it's employment, business, career opportunities, and working relationships, and so on, so forth. There's a little short example. Here's another one. Very similar. Self-appearances, first impressions, your attitude, your money and values, communication, home, family, your roots, romance, play, expression, creativity, health, fitness, relationships, intimacy, property, travel, career goals, groups, ending, healing, closure, spirituality. All right. Thirdly, we have, or actually fourthly, the aspects. So you have a conjunction, which is a separation of 0 degrees between 2 or more planets, and its keywords would be intensity and focus. The sextile is a separation of 60 degrees between 2 or more planets, and that represents opportunity. A square, which is 90 degrees between 2 or more planets, which is obstacle and action, and so on. Over here is a picture of a couple extra ones. So you have the semi-sextile and stuff in the semi-square. This is a picture in one of my books of a basic drawing of a birth circle, or a birth chart right in the beginning of the signs. Here's some of the symbols that they use. So, birth charts. Alright, where am I? So now that we've done that, we've gone over the 12 signs, the planets, and the placements. There's also nodes in there too, but you don't have to know the north and south node stuff right now. That's more in-depth and more complex stuff. And you learned about the aspects, and these are, so a definition of aspects would be basically, so due to the planets in the houses, the geometric angles are created between the planets, and between the planets and angles of the houses, those are called aspects. And each has a meaning. So, when doing a birth chart, you need to interpret the chart as organic whole, a living pattern of whom and what he or she can become. And it's like a hologram, basically, encoded with information that can be used for self-awareness. And when you think of a hologram, or a horoscope even, as a hologram, it's a symbolic projection from a level of reality, vastly different from our own. And a hologram is made up of interconnected parts that we have to understand before we can grasp the whole meaning of the whole thing. So we bring it with our own intuitive perceptions to the overall pattern. So with the birth charts, you have some more symbols. It's usually a circle, And you have here your southern and northern hemisphere and eastern and western. And then you have your quadrants. And also, you usually have these lines going through, making a plus. And they are the ascendant or the rising sign. And then you have the descendant, the midheaven, or the, I'm honestly not sure how to pronounce this, but Imam Coli or Coli. And then there's more complicated ones, which are more complex, like the equatorial ascendant, which is the ascendant of the chart. If you were born at the equator, which symbolizes who you think you are. And then there's the vertex, which is a point of fate or destiny. So the ascendant or rising is the sign and degree of the zodiac rising at the time of birth. Then the DS is the opposite, the ascending, so it's on the cusp of the 7th house. Then you have the MC, which is the highest point of the zodiac at the time of birth. And then the IC, which is the zodiac point opposite of the midheaven. As I said before, birth charts, they're circular, 360. And the ascendant horizontal line goes through the middle, forms the horizon, which is AS, so that usually goes this way. That red line there, if you could see it. And then you have the space above it, which is the south horizon, below is the north, and so on. So now we go on to the sun and moon. The sun at birth represents your outer personality, so it's what's visible to all of us. The moon indicates your inner world of feelings and emotions. So you'd have to consult a birth chart for an astrologist for positive, or basically to find out the moon on your birthday and stuff. Now, moon magic, it's fun. It can be used a lot in Wicca and all the fun witchy stuff that some people like to do. But it's also used a lot in healing and medicine. So moon magic has a lot to do with lunar wisdom and moon worship and healing and moon signs. So with stones and crystals, flowers and certain animals. And there are different ways that people can use the moon. And the moon influences a lot. Believe it or not, as I mentioned earlier, it has a lot of influences on our Earth naturally. So with tides, the Egyptians, they used it to predict seasons and when the Nile would flood and harvesting and stuff. So some of the other influences, they actually believe that the moon somehow syncs up with women's menstrual cycles. And it's kind of like everyone's acting crazy because, well, yeah, all the women are acting crazy because they're having their menstrual cycle. And they'll even do the once in a blue moon, where there's usually like the moon twice when it shouldn't be, and that's very rare. It's once in a blue moon. So some of the ways that you can harness and use moon magic is through lunar gardening, or tarot cards, or talismans, and crystals and stuff like that. Here I have a picture of some tarot cards. I tried to explain why it left. Oh well. Okay, well, here. So here's a picture of a layout. I tried to explain what each cards were in one of my discussion board topics. So the first card is where you are at right now. The second card represents the potential and changes. Third card, what to focus on. Fourth card, your past. Fifth, your strengths. Sixth, near future, so on and so on. And there are different positions and numbers of cards and layouts that you can do. So you could even do just like 5 cards or 7 cards and do love things or Celtic. And the moon is also very popular for its lunar year and its festivals. Like in October, we have the festival that is there on the 31st. I mean, Halloween, but the festival of Hecate, which is remembering our ancestors. And then you have the festivals for the harvesting, and the flooding, and the goddess that I mentioned earlier. So you kind of have to learn all the phases of the moon in order to track and learn the patterns there and learn how to harness. Down here is a gardening element table. So these are things you can do if you want to harness the moon's magic through that. This is talismans. So you have the obverse and reverse. And the lower picture is a picture of crystals harnessing moon magic with candles. Here's what some of the crystals and stones are called and mean. Quartz is very popular. If you haven't ever used quartz for healing, it's actually very useful. So believe it or not, people actually lay down and place a bunch of rocks and crystals all over them at certain points of their body to harness certain energies and blood flows, basically, to kind of harness the magic and power. So, moving on. In case you're wondering, here's a chart of the moons this year. If you ever see on Facebook or Twitter, I don't know what social media you guys use. My brother thinks I'm crazy. All his friends, when I talk about Facebook, they make me feel old. But I always see things about the pink moon coming and stuff, or the harvest moon. A lot of Native Americans used that one because they knew they had to harvest soon. The hunting moon, the hunter's moon. Here's another way of harnessing moon magic through gardening. If it's something you ever want to try. I gotta imagine it's probably pretty peaceful actually doing some sort of gardening and stuff like that. I don't really see how there could be anything bad with that or weird. Now there's actually also palm reading too. Each line on our hand resembles something different. So here's a picture explaining what each line means. Some people have all these lines, some people don't. But I mean, most basic ones that you'll hear about are your lifeline, your love line, all that stuff. So not only are there moon signs, but there are sun signs too. And these go with all the zodiac signs as well. So each zodiac sign has a moon and sun meaning. So the outer you and the part of you that you show to others that is really difficult to hide is usually your sun side. It's bright. It's showing off. It's being shown to everyone. It's really hard to hide it and conceal it. So that's also more of your horoscopes when you read them, and most people go, oh wow, yeah, I think that actually describes me a little bit. That's because those traits are very obvious, I guess you could say. I mean, you might share them in common with someone else too that isn't the same, but those are what show the most in you when you're hanging out with your friends, or even if you're walking down the street and someone can kind of pinpoint you. And so being on the cusp too, if you have a birthday that's like towards the end of the cusp for a certain sign, so the other signs that are near you, you might show similar traits to them. So if you're a late Gemini and you're close to Cancer, you might share some qualities as well as the Cancer sign. So astrology is a mix of science and actually philosophy. You can go on and on and on for days on how to decipher it. So some people say that our universe and how things work out is random, but mostly have intuition, sense pattern, or connectedness. Most people have that intuition and sense of pattern or connectedness. A lot of people don't, though. They're just like, oh, it's random. Oh, it's a coincidence or an accident. Instead of actually developing a meaning for it or a deeper meaning. I mean, some people just kind of blow it off, I guess. So you can view life as an opportunity to achieve those intentions and it'll make more sense, I guess. So, really, you're not trying to predict like, okay, tomorrow a bucket of water is gonna fall on me. Like, it's not like that kind of predicting. It's more finding your personality, character, relationships, career, compatibility type of thing. So, and you can't just all of a sudden be like, am I gonna fall in love with so and so, or are they gonna fall in love with me? It doesn't quite work like that, but you get the idea. Take it all with a grain of salt. So these are the different types of astrology. You have Chinese, which is also Eastern, Western, Babylonian, Egyptian, and Roman and Indian, and Christian astrology. And here's the Chinese. You have all their animals. Here's the Western, which is pretty much the basic. They kind of take it from the Babylonian astrology, Egypt, and Roman Indian. Like, those ones are similar. This is cool because you have all the Egyptians holding it up and stuff and supporting and all connected somehow. This is an Indian picture of all the animals and stuff from the astrology signs and zodiac. And then we have the Christian one right here. You kind of have like the God in the middle and all of the followers too, and then their signs, Taurus and stuff. And then you have the moon and stuff, so there's that. So, the interesting thing about, I want to go back really quick to Chinese astrology, is it was really, really old actually. And it went way back to like BC, even earlier, maybe even like back in the 3rd millennium during the Shang dynasty. And most people know about the cycle of the 12 animals. However, behind that lies a more complex system of astrological calculations and interpretation. And it's way more difficult compared to Western, which is what I just kind of gave you a short, brief, basic explanation of how to do it. But it can still calculate everything by using the time of birth, the date, and the place of birth. So astrology had its dismissal probably around Isaac Newton's time, and it had been separated into astronomy and more scientific, and then the church came in and kind of put their foot down to things too, and due to the Enlightenment era and the rational idealism, people were like, well, that's not, this is just a bunch of politics stuff. People disagreeing, agreeing, or saying, well, I believe this, well, I believe that. Okay, well, this could be proven, this can't be proven. Well, let's rationalize, let's make, it's just, a lot of controversy. So astrology began to be rediscovered then after the church kind of dismissed it for a while in the 20th century. And that was because Uranus and Neptune were being discovered. And that basically, the discovery of those, they were kind of symbolic. They were a symbolic revolutionary like awakening of the human conscious. So it changed many perspectives. And the future of astrology. So today astrologers have computers, so there are less errors of judgment and cycles. So that helps make it more accurate. However, who knows how much some people update it, though. It has to still be updated here and there, and some people may not do that and just try and make money off of it or something, which is what you find a lot online. And that's when you run into the horoscopes and stuff that you're like, what? This sounds nothing like, yeah. I'm sure you've all maybe looked at that and stuff, so that's the future, is that we have our computers now to help us track and follow these things and stuff. It's a lot easier than handwriting it all out. And here's a quote that I found in one of my books that I liked. All that we are and will be is reflected by the Earth's position in relation to the sun and position of the moon and planets in our solar system, and the way that they moderate the Earth's movement. So there's a basic quote of everything. And I don't know how many of you have ever just like explored different ways or to try and better your lives, but if you've ever read the book The Secret or seen the movie, it's pretty good. I mean, the whole idea of the law of attraction, I feel like that has a lot to do with astrology. It's kind of like the opportunities that it provides for us. We attract what we basically give off. So you should watch it or read it if you haven't. It'll make a little bit more sense probably too. And that is my presentation. And here's my works cited. I know it was long, but I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you.